Hello, I'm Rush Propst. You're watching Average Joe Sports Talk.
We are here in Moultrie, Georgia with the legendary Rush Propst in his home. Coach, I appreciate you bringing us in. We're huge fans of yours, always have been. I want to start this interview out talking about, your early years in Ohatchee. Growing up in Ohatchee, which is really near where we live now. There's a fire that was instilled in you back then that burns to this day as a competitor. It shows through your coaching. Talk about those early years growing up in Ohatchee, Alabama, that kind of set the foundation of what we know as Rush Propst today.
Well, first and foremost, appreciate y'all being here today, Bo, and both of you. I think that I like what you're doing. I mean, your model is to help kids and to promote high school athletics, and especially in what we're here today talking about high school football. And I think that for y'all to travel as long as you did to South Georgia, I'm glad that you're here. South Georgia is very passionate about his football, but we'll get into that later. But to answer your question, my father and my mother, I had a grandmother, actually, my mother's mother, Gladys Harden, that pushed me. She was a pusher. And she was voted as the businesswoman of the year in the state of Florida in the 60s. Very motivated lady, and was sort of a pusher to me. Mom and Dad were just hardworking people in middle class Ohatchee, really lower middle class, to be quite honest with you, at that time. And but it was. I mean, I was in a community at Ohatchee that was really a winning program, and I think that, to me, it was just the right time, right place. Ohatchee was winning big time in football. It's a great place to grow up. A small town that had one hamburger joint in it. Didn't have a red light in it. And it was a 1A program and a 4A classification. So my junior and senior year, had 52 players on the team. That's a lot for a 1A program. And it seemed like everybody in the school, every male seemed like that was an athlete played. And we didn't have a baseball program. We had football, basketball, track. That's it. And so I have to give credit where credit's due, though, guys. Is Reagan Clark, which is Bill Clark, head coach at UAB's dad, would have to be sort of my hero. Mm-hmm. He was the guy, and the three assistants, and Ken Logan, which is my principal at Asheville, Jerry Ellard, who was my coach, and he was my position coach. He came back to become the principal at Ohatchee at one time, and Tim McTaggart, the basketball coach, who also helped with football too. So those four gentlemen were my coaches, and I had a close-knit relationship with those guys. But really, the leader was Reagan Clark, and I give a lot of credit to him as the person that I guess he was a mentor. I idolized him. I loved him. I'm scared to death of him. Still to this day, scared to death of him.
That's awesome.
But he was way ahead of his time, guys. I don't know if y'all remember. He used to analyze Alabama football in the Anniston Star. Mm-hmm. He would analyze the play that won the game or the play that lost the game, which back then, Coach Bryant wasn't losing too many football games.
Not too many.
But he would write it up in the Anniston Star, and people would read it. And he would diagram the play and show the play in the paper, and he would analyze the game the day before, and he did such a wonderful job. But Reagan Clark was ahead of his time. There's no question about it. We were at a school that was 1A, 53 football players. Like I've stated before, no one went both ways my 10th grade year.
That's amazing.
No one went both ways. I started at tight end as a 10th grader. As my junior year, I think we had maybe one player go both ways. My senior year, there was maybe two people went both ways, and that was me. That was me and Wayne Whaley, and so maybe Dennis Nance. There were three of us that went both ways, but we didn't go both ways all the time. So we had plenty of depth. And I guess the only negative at Ohatchee High School is that we did not pull off and win a state championship under the Reagan-Clark era, and that was a hard pill to swallow. And you asked me what drove me. I'm going to tell you what's drove me through my whole career is the influence Coach Clark had on me. But here's the number one thing. So 10th grade year, we had a great football team, had some injuries. I had an appendicitis, then I had a hunting accident, only got to play 4 ball games. But then my junior year, we lose in the second or third round. Back then you had 4 rounds. Maybe back then you had 3 rounds, I can't remember. But we lost to Collinsville in 74, fall of 74, in a game that we probably should have won. We turned it over about 7 times that night. Turn around the next year, we were ranked number 1 in the state of Alabama. We go 10-0, guys. The closest game we had was Ramburn played us to a 21-0. We beat them 21-0. They never they never got inside our 40-yard line, and we beat them pretty handily in the regular season. They come back to us in the first round of the playoffs and upset us, set 12-7.
Wow.
And again, a game where we turned the ball over and they won the state championship going away. Nobody challenged them. Wow. So that was a hard pill to swallow. And then Ohatchee came back 2 years later, I think, and in the 77 season and won the state championship. So, but that drove me. I mean, I just could not get over that. I mean, as a player, I think it's the main reason I went to try to play college football. I think it's some of the reasons that it drove me as a football coach to win a state championship was us not getting the job done for Coach Clark in 1975.
It was the fact that you didn't finish the job, and that's kind of what instilled and drove you.
I promise you, that's 90% of it.
I've never heard something like that. That is actually an amazing answer. I want to throw something at you. During 77, 78, when you were at JSU, there was something going on there at JSU. They were a who's of coaches there at the time, with Paul Benefield and yourself. What was it going on at JSU there for you guys that played there at JSU during that time that has instilled and ingrained some great football coaches from that time and era?
Well, first and foremost, watching around. I mean, Clarky Mayfield was our coach in 76. He died in a hotel fire in Kentucky. And Jim Fuller, who was our offensive line coach, who played for Bear Bryant at Alabama, he became named the head football coach. He was killed in the summer before the 77 season. And Coach Fuller, we get the call from coaches. All called us and told us what happened. We'd heard the news and all that kind of stuff. We was devastated because back then you'd go home and work out. You didn't stay there the whole summer.
Yeah.
And so when we got back for fall camp in late July, Coach Fuller was the head football coach. He met with all of us. He told us what we were going to do going forward. We had a good football team. We had a great off season, had a great spring practice under Coach Mayfield. And then there was a guy named Watson Brown that was the offensive coordinator, and he was innovative. This guy was throwing a football all over the yard in 77 like nobody's business. We had a quarterback named Bobby Ray Green from Ramburn, Alabama that was really a winner. And we had good football players. And I just think the coaching staff sort of was very cohesive. I think Coach Fuller had come from Coach Bryant, had won at Alabama in the 60s as an offensive guard, an undersized offensive guard. So I thought we just overachieved. We lost the national championship that year to Lehigh in the championship game, but it was a very successful year. And then the following year, obviously, we played Delaware and lost in the semifinals up in Delaware. And so being at Jacksonville State during that time, first thing, I learned a lot of football. I learned, because I'd played in the wishbone attack under Coach Clark, But then under Coach Brown, it was sort of a spread attack somewhat, where we threw the football more than usual, and then there was a lot of good guys on that team that ended up becoming football coaches. A lot of them, because Jacksonville State's a teacher school, like Troy. And so a lot of people that go to school at Jacksonville State ends up coming out being teachers and football coaches, and there's just a lot of them. And but I had a good 3 years of playing football at Jacksonville State, and the only reason I didn't play my last year is I got into coaching.
I got you. I want to fast forward to '89 and Asheville, Alabama, when you took over as head football coach there. Was that your first true head job, correct? What was going through your mind when you took the reins there? It's a kind of a two-part question. When you knew, hey, my direct decisions is going to affect me, one way or another, I'm either going to win or I'm going to lose, and I'm taking the blame for it. And two, what were some of the tough lessons you learned from that first gig? A lot of guys are real ambitious, want to get that first job, but through all the smoke, and we have a lot of young coaches watching this, what were some of those lessons that you learned that you were like, hey, I didn't even know it was like this?
Well, I could fill up a whole segment on what not to do, but first thing is I went to Heflin High School and coached for 5 seasons under Dennis Moore. I'd be remiss to not mention that, because really that showed me a different way, because we did things differently there than what I'd sort of done in college or under Coach Clark. And the other thing is I did my practice teaching, before I went to Heflin under Lou Scales, legendary coach at Alexandra High School, and Larry Ginn. And so I did my practice teaching and was assigned to Coach Ginn. And so I was there for that fall of '80 at Alexandra High School, and learned a lot under Coach Scales and Coach Ginn, because Coach Clark had played at Alexandra under Coach Scales. So I'd been wrapped up with all the Alexandria way, the Ohatchee way, the Reagan Clark way, the Lou Scales way. When I went to Heflin High School, guys, it was completely different. Everything was different. Dennis did it the George Hopplesdale way and his way. And so for 5 years, then went to Atlanta for a year to be in big school ball at Cherokee in Atlanta. Came back to Asheville, and the only reason I came back to Asheville was Reagan Clark. Again, he got back into coaching. He became the head football coach at Asheville High School in 1987, and I came back to go to work for him because I believed in him, and I wanted to work for him. Asheville was not a football school, guys. Y'all know that.
Yeah.
But two things was him, Ken Logan, the principal. He was probably one of my favorite assistant coaches. All of them were. Jerry Ellard and Tim McTaggart to this day. I think the world of all of them. But Coach Clark was the head guy, and I came back to work for him and work for Ken Logan. And on that staff was John Cross, the head coach at Jacksonville State, and Bill Clark. So the head coach of UAB. So we were assistants together under his dad, under Bill's dad. So in '87 and '88. So how I got that job, I think it needs to be said, is that Coach Clark's wife, who was battling ovarian cancer, she was in a very bad stage. On early January of 1989, Miss Judy drove herself home after work. Coach Clark stayed for basketball practice, JV basketball practice. Me and Bill was doing 9th grade and 8th grade basketball. He was helping me do basketball. And we were over at the 9th grade gym. Coach Clark, we get the phone call that had been a car wreck. Came back and she was killed in a car wreck. And the issue was, Coach Clark, I think over time of driving back and forth and seeing the tree that she had hit, it was bent. And I think going back and forth every day wore on him every single day. So finally in March, he told me, he said, "Rush, I want you to go to the beach with me." And I had no idea what he wanted to do. I mean, I was odd for him to ask me to go to Panama City with him. I didn't know why he wanted to go. But when he told me to go, if he'd have told me to go to, where, Purgatory, I'd have gone with him. And
Let's go.
So I went with him, and we were down there, and while we were down there, he broke the news to me that he was going to resign. But he wanted to go through spring practice. And he said he wanted me to have the job. So we go through spring practice. We never said anything. He never said anything to administration. He never said anything to nobody but me.
Man.
He may have told Bill, his own son, but we kept it quiet. We went through spring practice. We actually had a pretty good spring practice. Well, after spring practice, a week after spring, which was late May around Memorial Day, he goes in and tells Ken Logan, the principal, that he's resigning. And when he does, he said, and I want Rush to have the job. So Coach Logan, at the time, went to see Joey Ray, the superintendent that was in charge, and said, hey, look, it's late. I want Rush to have the job. I want to go out and find another football coach. And boom, that's how it happened. So I became the head football coach at Asheville in 1989 due to a traumatic situation, and turned down a restricted earnings job at Troy University. So to do it. And because I remember being torn about that, thinking, do I want to go to college football or do I want to stay and be a head football coach in high school? But I just felt compelled to Coach Clark to finish the job there and to get this program turned around, because we'd gone 0-10 in 87, 5-5 in 88, and lost in the first round of the playoffs to the #1 team, Sardis, on the last play of the game.
In 88?
In 88.
Stephen Jackson.
Yes, and Sardis was 10-0. So, and ranked #1. So that year, so my first year as a head football coach in 89, just like most young football coaches, and I tell all young football coaches this, we started out 3-0. And man, we won. And it all boiled down to the work we'd done that summer. Because I knew how to work in the summer. I knew how to get our players to work in the summer. So, the first 2 assistant coaches I hired was, once Coach Logan called me in the next morning after the board meeting and said, Rush, you're the new head football coach. I left his office and I called Bill. Went to my office and I called Bill and I said, Bill, because back then you didn't have cell phone. Bill Clark. I called Bill and I said, Bill, they just gave me the head coaching job. I want you to come be my assistant. Because I don't know what you're going to do, but I want you to come be my assistant. And he agreed to do that. I hung the phone up. Next phone call picked up was John Ross. Called John Ross, and I said, John, I want you to be my assistant football coach. We've worked together as assistant, but I'm now the head football coach. Would y'all work up under me? Both agreed to do it. And here's what's ironic about all this.
What a staff.
Yeah, but here's what's crazy. Bill was the offensive coach. I was the defensive coach. And what's bizarre about that is sort of Bill and John. Bill was the offense coordinator. Him and John ran the offense. I ran the defense. Flip that 20 years later.
20 years later.
He's a defensive guru, and I'm the offensive coach. So, but I think it's helped both of us. I really do. But it was a really good staff. I had other guys on that staff that worked, but Bill and John and I in 1989 started out 3-0, and then obviously we started going into the skids and ended up 5-5, but making the playoffs. And we go and play. I did a podcast the other night with that 2-a-day podcast with Dan Harrelson on USA Today, and we talked about this with Dale Pruitt was on the podcast. My first playoff game I ever coached as a head football coach was against Plainview High School, and in 1989, and Jeremy Pruitt was a freshman on that team. Picked off a pass in that game, ran it back for a touchdown, and we lost 27-0. So first year, we made the playoffs. We lose the first round, and then following year in 90, guys, we go 1-9.
Wow.
1-9. And then I really had to evaluate what the heck I was doing. Bill had left me and gone to Piedmont and to back to his hometown. John stayed with me, and I'd hired some people, but I just didn't feel like I hired the right people at the time. Outside of Bill and John, I just didn't really have a great staff. And I knew then, I said, look, if I'm going to stay in this thing long, being 5-5, losing in the first round, and 1-9. Now, most of those games were competitive. There was only one game that was a semi-blowout, and that was to Piedmont. The rest of the games we lost closely. And it was tough to swallow that pill for the 8 ball games that we had a chance to win that we didn't win. So I did some soul searching, man. And I remember going on a trip somewhere. I can't remember. I went to Cheehaw and rented a cabin, or I went to the beach for a weekend, or I don't remember exactly what I did. But in the summer or spring of '91 is when I changed my thought process on hiring football coaches. And so that's what I did. I went out and hired better staff. And then that next year we go 7-3 and went and won a bunch of close ball games and turned our season around. And then obviously in '92, you know what happened. We ended up being in the semifinals and losing to the state champions 21-17 down at Alma, and had a wonderful year. The school's probably the best team in school history, and really nearly pulled off state championship in '92.
Yeah. Now, from the years '94 through '98, you had a few trips when you left Asheville to like Eufaula, Alma, Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that enticed you to go to some of these places? Were you looking for a bigger school or a different location job, or what was it that enticed you to make those moves?
In 90, my dad he was retiring, and he came down with colon cancer. So I stayed at Asheville, watched him battle it. So leaving in '93 to go to Eufaula in the spring of '93, he was in rough shape. So it was tough to leave him, but I'll never forget this as long as I live, is that 2 things happened. One, my principal said, he called me in the office in February of '93, he said, "Rush, I'm fixing to retire." And he said, "I don't know who they'll hire here as a principal. I don't know what this system will do, but I'm just telling you up front, he had made it easy for me there. I was an assistant principal. I was in the field house most of the day to be able to coach football. I knew the next guy coming in, principal or whoever, they may have me in a class teaching classes and not having been up in that field house working on football. So he said, "Rush, if I was you, I'd look for a job, because I'm retiring." And so I did. I applied for several jobs, and the Eufaula job I got. And that's why I left. But it was tough leaving, when your dad's dying of cancer.
Man.
And so in '93, I left to go to Eufaula. And I was there in '93, '94, '95, and '96. The deal at Eufaula was, it was a bigger school, 5A at the time. And but I never could break past the second round. The first year we turned it around. There was some tragic stuff that went on in my life in '93. So with my first wife had a real bad car wreck, and then we got the season turned around at the end and beat Stanhope Elmore, and a lot of people think that's probably the biggest signature win, or maybe the second signature win of my career. Probably beating either Aniana, school's first history in Asheville in '92, or beating West Blockton, who was undefeated, ranked #1 in the state, or Stanhope Elmore, who was ranked 17th nationally, #1 in the state in 5A. We upset them in the first round.
Wow.
But we lost the second round to Escambia and at Eufaula. But I stayed there 4 years, and to be honest with you, I could never get over the hump. We could never get out of the second round. So my superintendent retired, principal retired. Long story short, I left there, and I'll tell you what happened there is that the principal at Mobile, Paul Sousa, saw me coaching the '97 All-Star game, the Alabama Mississippi All-Star game. I was not going back, and this is the first time I think I've ever said this on record. I was not going back to follow the coach. I was going in the insurance business. I'd made my mind up to get out of football. And my last hurrah was coaching in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game as the defensive coordinator. Well, we ended up winning the game. Defensively, we held them to 2 field goals. And that team was loaded. Most people thought they were going to beat us to death. And I'll be honest with you, that was a big win in my career. And I'll tell you what it did. It forced Paul Sousa, the superintendent at the time, in Mobile County Schools, to offer me a job. And he offered me a job to be the athletic director at Alma, Grand Bay, put them 2 schools together and make Alma Bryant, and make it a big 7A school. And it enticed me to do it, to come down there. And me going down there is probably the best story ever told throughout my career, because it is a tremendous story. I've said if I ever write a book, it will probably get the biggest chapter, because the things that we did down there were remarkable.
That's amazing. Okay, Coach, so had Alma Bryant came together and you said it was pretty remarkable. What was that all about?
Well, here's why it made it probably one of the greatest stories ever told, because what you had Alma High School, been in existence for 80 years. Grand Bay High School, been in existence for 80 years. So that rivalry was intense because it was culturally different. Religion was different. You know, a heavy Catholic-based religion there in Baylor Baptist, and then the Southern Baptist in the Grand Bay area. They were about, 9 miles apart, but they grew up completely different. And there was
interesting.
And there was a lot of hatred between the 2 schools. A lot of hatred between the 2 schools. So when we built Alma Bryant, Paul Sousa, and he was under some pressure, a lot of pressure. But he felt like that South Mobile County needed a school, because Grand Bay and Alma were falling down. They were in rough, low socioeconomic areas.
No money.
No money. A lot of, Grand Bay was more about watermelon farming and farming. It was just a bedroom town right on the Mississippi line, going to Pascagoula and Biloxi. Grand Bay, Baylor Baptist was a shrimping town. It was a seafood town. And
like Forrest Gump.
absolutely. And people thought I was crazy to take the job. I had people tell me, Terry Curtis for one, said, "You are absolutely out of your mind to take that job. You must be getting out of coaching, or you're fixing to kill your career." But I did take it. And I think Grand Bay was 3-37 in the last 4 seasons. I think Alba was 1-19 in the last 2 seasons. But neither one of it had many winning seasons, period. I know R.L. Watson had some pretty good success there in the 80s, but I don't think they were a deep playoff run. I think they had some winning teams in the 80s, but that's it. And so
we're over almost into the 2000s at this point.
Yeah, we're going into 98, and I was AD at Alba, coach at Alba, but AD first and second block. Third block I traveled. Fourth block I was the athletic director at Grand Bay.
Wow.
Yeah. So then they played at the end of the year, game 10, in front of a packed house. They ended up winning the game like 50-something to 6. And people thought, you have just driven a wedge into it. I had actually a board member that came onto the field and confronted me during the game and said, "Do you realize you're going to run those kids off? That's your team starting Monday." And I told him, in no uncertain terms, to get off the field. But the biggest thing was, I said, "No, you don't understand." The next week, I walk in there on that Monday, and those kids gravitated me like it was, because they wanted to be a part of that.
They want to be a part of winning.
They wanted to be a part of winning. And I thought that game showed the Grand Bay people and the Alba people the things to come. We started the next year, we win the first 12 games in a row. 9 shutouts. 9 shutouts in 7A football. God. That's what got all the publicity. That's how I got the Hoover job. And because it was statewide news. So at the end, we get beat by Viger in a game we shouldn't have lost. In game 13, they lost to Vestavia in the state championship, very close game, 10-8. So we were on the cusp of winning it in '98. probably should have won it, to be honest with you. And
Wow.
and we turned around, and that made me, so I think, state coach of the year. They gave one back then, and when I got state coach of the year, obviously Hoover came calling, and then that's how I got the Hoover job, was the success I had at Alma Bryant.
That was my next question, was to talk about the move to Hoover. And I'm just going to throw some numbers out here at you that was unbelievable when I went, before we did this interview. At Hoover, you were 110-16 record overall, with 5 state championships. It was an incredible run. We're not getting into the two-a-days part just yet, but just if you was the outside looking in, what do you think that one key ingredient was during that run that helped you maintain such a high level of winning during that time?
I think anytime you go 7 straight years to the state championship, winning 5 of them, you're doing something right. But let me say this. Hoover was a ticking time bomb. If that Vestavia had won the 98 state title, Clay Chaffin won the 99 state title. 97, Jeff Davis won the 96 state title. 97 may have been Tuscaloosa County, or it may have been vice versa. It may have been whatever. But Pelham was winning, Mount Brook was winning, Vestavia had just won a state title, Homewood was winning state titles, and we're the biggest school in the state. More kids than anybody. So I took the job based upon resources and personally. There was a personal interest there in myself that we talked about off the air. And there was a financial windfall for me in my retirement system. I was making very little money in Mobile. Now, I had all the money and had anything I needed down there. People really took care of me, but I didn't have everything run through the retirement system to where it would help me later on in my retirement, in the state retirement system. So really, outside of a personal reason, outside of the state retirement system and a financial planner telling me you need to take this job because you're going to double your salary, and then the resources that I felt like Hoover had. And that's the reason I took that job. And I really think that all you had to do there was just get them to believe what we were trying to do. And it wasn't just to go win a state title. I told them from day one, this is not about winning a state championship. And they all looked at me funny because I'd never won one. It'd been closed. Asheville, we knocked on the door. Alma Bryant, we knocked on the door, but we had not gotten there. Similar to the way it was when I was at Ohatchee High School.
Absolutely.
So, and at Jacksonville State University, we were close to winning a national championship. So, I had been close, but I told them right up the front, this is not about us winning a state title. This is about taking a program and putting it on a national level, as being a De La Salle, being now a Don Bosco Prep, or Massillon at the time. I wanted to be in the same whispers as those schools. And I think they thought I was a little bit crazy, and maybe I was, but when we won the first state championship in 2000, we celebrated, but not long. And I didn't just jump up and down. We accepted the trophy. We were happy we won, but I knew our work had just now gotten started good. And we started going to work and saying, okay, we're fixing to repeat this and keep going and keep going and keep going. And we're going to try to start playing national teams from outside the state of Alabama. We're not going to dodge anybody. We're going to do this thing and take it to a national level. And I think the next year, we lost the state championship to Daphne in 2001. And we beat them in 2000, but we came back in 2002 and won it. Then won it in 2003, and then it just got to rolling. And it was, and every year you had to feed the monster. I made that statement at one time, but it was true. Once you get it going like there, it becomes a monster, and you have to feed it. And we did. I had great parent support. I can't tell you what my presidents. I can sit here and name every one of them to this day. I can sit there and name you Greg Mims to Max Harbuck to Frank Batuzik to Terry Eisenmenger, Tommy Duncan, Parker Wilson, Ronnie Van Zant, who's battling cancer right now, Terry Stevens, Parker Wilson again, George Bearfield. You know, I had great people. Billy Owens was heavily involved with us. Jim Counts, who's now passed away. But I had a group of people there, plus people inside the city council and Tom Defnall and Bill Veach and, you know, but man, all the credit has to go to Jack Farr, our superintendent who hired me, and Gene Godwin, and Bill Bryant. So listen to this deal. So Dr. Farr was superintendent, Gene Godwin was my principal, and Bill Bryant was our team doctor and a very influential person in the community. In a period of about 2 years, all of them died of cancer.
Man.
Dr. Farr died either in 03 or 03 of brain cancer. Probably the man of integrity, don't even touch what he was about. That man's the best superintendent I've ever been around in my life. Him and Leonard McCoy from here down in Colquitt. Gene Godwin, a phenomenal principal, died of esophageal cancer, and then Bill Bryant died of lung cancer. So, man, I was snake bit, you know, losing all those people, and there was a lot of turmoil that went down in the Hoover Times. But, you know, man, I you know, the winning part and the record you reflect back, 110 wins. Actually, if you look at that somewhere here, it's, you know, 4 of those wins were taken away by forfeit, you know, and really on the field was 115 wins and 12 losses, you know, on the field. Now, I know that we had to forfeit some ball games, but my point being is, when you sit there and on the field, you didn't lose but 11, 12 games, I mean, and you won 115 on the field, man, that's a good run, and you know, I think it's just a period of my life that I won't ever forget. You know, they say once a buck, always a buccaneer, and I sort of feel that way. I think I will brag on Josh Nippler. Josh has done a good job. He's come in there and he kept it going. And he has to be given that credit, because that's awfully hard to follow that. But he was able to do that. And Hoover should never lose. They should never be not at the very top. They should be either winning state titles or in the state championship game or in the semifinal game, you know, every year. I mean, it is just the structure we put together there in our youth leagues, our middle school, and how we sort of structured everything, because there was no structure when I got there. But once we got it structured out right, and I give a lot of credit to the administration, to the city council, to the Booster Club, especially the Booster Club and administration, for allowing us to do that. And once we got it put together, man, it's rolling and still rolling today.
Yeah, the foundation's there, and like you said, Niblett's picked up and kept it rolling. And
he has.
You're absolutely correct.
And I think even when Josh leaves, when he decides to retire or move on to another school, I think the next guy that comes in will have the same success. I just don't think Hoover will ever fall off.
Let me ask you something. When you took over there at Hoover, the game of football itself is always evolving. And during that time, when you were winning those games, the spread offense became really prevalent. Which you had a form of it, I noticed, when I used to go watch you play. And even to this day, I noticed your offense has changed and evolved. How do you stay ahead of that curve from an X's and O's standpoint? Because you seem to be a student of the game. Obviously, you watch so much film and things like that. But you're also – a lot of coaches that get stubborn, and Les Miles is one, for example. He used to be neck and neck, and he wasn't willing to change. And now look where he's at, look where Nick Saban's at. You always seem to kind of stay ahead of the curve and evolve a little bit of what you do. How does that come about? Is that something you just kind of done your whole career, or is it something that had to get instilled in you after maybe a few losses or something?
I think it goes back to Reagan Clark. I thought he was ahead of the game, defensively ahead of the game. Offensively, we were a no-huddle team when I played for him in Ohatchee, which was way ahead of the curve in the mid-'70s. So, and we were the first spread team in the state of Alabama. We were the first 4-wide, true 4-wide or 3-wide, 2-back, shotgun, NASCAR, Indy, Derby, all the terms we used, up-tempo offense. There was nobody else doing it. So when we first did it in 99 and 2000, nobody knew how to stop it. So as time went on, people started catching up. Mm-hmm. The Bill Clarks of the world, mm-hmm. Defensive-minded gurus mm-hmm. that you had to beat to win it. So the two things I think we did there was smart is I think we always stayed ahead of the curve, mm-hmm. but I always had good coaches. I always hired great football coaches. From Bill Clark being my first DC at Hoover, to Kevin Shirley, to Todd Watson, to Jeremy Pruitt, to Kevin Scherer. Those guys are household names now with defensive football. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, Bill's the head coach at UAB, Jeremy's the head coach at Tennessee, Scherer now is at the New York Giants, Todd Watson's at Tennessee, Kevin Shirley is out of coaching now. He ended up at UAB. That's Larry Blakely's nephew. And so all those guys were innovative guys, and defensively we never would sacrifice defensive football. So, I think that they understood what we did offensively. We always helped the defense out in practice, and I just think I surrounded myself with some of the best coaches that could be available and that we could get hired. And then I think offensively we just stayed ahead of the curve, and here's why. We weren't afraid to get in a private plane or a commercial plane and fly and visit 4 or 5 different people in February, early March, while we were in our think tank month. We were not afraid to go out and change and look and say, okay, we're going to introduce this, or we're going to add this to our offense going forward. I know when we played Nice in 05, we spent a ton of time studying different things and ideas. For example, Dennis Erickson was the head football coach of the 49ers. He had been at the Miami Hurricanes in pro football. We sat down with Erickson and his staff of the 49ers and came up with a couple of concepts that we integrated into our offense.
That's crazy.
And then when we opened up with it in 05, when we played Nice on national TV, they had never seen us do that. And it was won the game for us. Because we jumped out, if you remember, early 14-0, they kept us and went ahead, but our conditioning and strength overtook them with our depth in the fourth quarter, and we ended up winning the game. But I
remember it was like 115 degrees or 120 degrees on the field that day.
It was so hot. But,
for those who's not familiar with the game he's talking about, is when they played Tim Tebow, national television.
They had 14 Division I players on that team over a period of 2 years that signed. They were flat loaded with players, but, Jeremy Pruitt defensively, I think that's his first real test as a coordinator. So he cut his teeth in one of the toughest environments you could cut it in, but and did a good job. And I think that with that, offensively we did some new stuff, like I said. But the other thing too is at Hoover is we were able to hire, Sean Sutton and from Asheville High School, who's a head football coach, and get him in there to be the strength and conditioning coordinator, and allow the coordinators not to have to spend so much time in the weight room all the time.
He's a true strength coach.
True strength coach. That paid huge dividends to sustain, our strength and conditioning. Because then I thought we went ahead of everybody in the state.
That's awesome.
I thought we were just much stronger and better conditioned than anybody in the state of Alabama. And so I know people are going to say, yeah, y'all got all that money at Hoover and you got all those resources, but you had to still do it. You still had to pull it together. And people are saying, well, I don't have a jet plane or a commercial airline. I don't have the kind of money that can fly all over the country and get all these new ideas. And maybe some of that's true, but probably not so in 7A football. Most people at in the competitive levels in 7A football in Alabama have all the same resources. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of putting it together. You see what Thompson is doing, Trussell's done, Central Phoenix City's done. You know, it ain't just been a Prattville, Hoover, Daphne arena anymore.
That's right.
These other schools now have popped up and are winning because they've invested into football. And somebody's come in there like a Mark Freeman and sort of cultivated the same things we cultivated in Hoover, and I think is equal to task.
Absolutely. Now, I know everybody watching is going to be leading up to this, and people caught wind. We were going to interview. They wanted 2-a-day. We got to address this. So, Coach, honestly, with the camera rolling and everything, 46 to 48 to 49 million viewers per episode. That average that I've been told. It took you from statewide to actually, to be honest with you, worldwide fame, and Hoover High School. I want Rush Propst to tell me the best positives of it, but I also want to tell you the back end of it. And before you do, I actually had Coach Dale Pruitt on the show before, and we talked about, he brought it up to us in an interview off the camera, and he said, Jeremy, liked it, but he said also it became to where, toward the end, it got to where it was a headache, and it was just in the way and things like that. But from your words, what was the positives and the negatives from it?
I would agree with Dale Pruitt on that. It started out a good thing. It did, and I thought it helped us win the 05 state championship because we needed that extra. We were going for 4 in a row. It's hard to convince kids to get fired up about 4 in a row. You know what I'm saying? And you've already had kids that have gone through the program that hadn't lost, that all they've done is be state champions. So we did use that as motivation, but that wasn't enough. When the cameras started rolling in 05, kids got fired up. And it really put us in a different level, in a different mindset, because you didn't want to lose being on camera. And so I thought 05 that was good. I thought it helped us win. On the other side of it, in 06, we were preseason ranked #1 in USA Today, and I thought it hurt us. And I think that's where Dale's and Jeremy's would be agreeable to me on it, is that they're right. I thought it became a hindrance, and I think it became a negative. And because I thought that first year, New York stayed out of it. They let the production crew do it, and it was a lot of football with a little bit of drama. In 06, the New York people got involved, the MTV people got involved, and they wanted more drama, less football.
The girlfriends.
And all that, and it was a detriment, and I thought it affected us, and possibly cost us the John Curtis game, and because that was the first time they filmed that year. It wasn't no game 5 or 6 that they even brought the film crew back. So anyway, there's a lot of things that if I was doing it differently, I would have done differently. Number one, I'd have made it. We would have hired an entertainment attorney, William Morris firm, and I would have generated more money for the school. Yeah, that's number one that they messed us up on and really got us on. School didn't get hardly any money out of it. $50,000, I think, each year, which is no money. When MTV was making all the money.
Oh, that's making
a killing.
Golly, yeah.
So that's the biggest mistake we made, is we should have made. Now the residual of it, we made a lot of money. Yeah. Here's what I'm saying. The butt cut, which is where we sell our apparel out of, usually would make us around $15,000. In the good years, we're making $15,000 a year profit, which is not bad. 05, it went to 125. Then to 145, to 150. And you know what kept it from going to 250?
What was that?
Just didn't have enough workers.
Didn't have enough people to supply and demand.
That's right. The supply and demand was so great. People were flying to Hoover, driving by Hoover, would come by there and buy stuff that was from Kansas, Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio, New York, Los Angeles. People were flying everywhere to wanted Hoover gear. And I mean, we just could not keep it keep it like supply and maintenance couldn't do it. So if we would have had a better setup there, could have probably made millions on that.
Yeah.
And then we should have been making millions anyway if we'd have gone a different route. But we didn't know. We didn't know
it was going to explode.
We didn't know it was going to be like that. And so, but I do agree with Dale that it became a problem. And I thought it possibly cost us state championship in 06. Not to take anything away from Bill and Prattville High School. They had a heck of a football team now. And they played a perfect ball game that night. Larry Smith played lights out. But we lost to John Curtis. And Dan Washford begged me not to play them because they really didn't have anybody else to play but us. So at the end of the day, I just think we probably shouldn't have played them. We'd already beat Tulsa Union to death out there. We was already ranked #1. All we had to do was just run the table. So I just wonder, going back and looking at it, if we hadn't played John Curtis and because of how they were set up, you got to understand, John Curtis had coaches at our game. They didn't go to their own games because their games they'd blow people out 70 and 80 to nothing. So they all worked.
Scouting.
Yeah, they were for scouting and worked for a whole summer, all year for week 5 or 6, whatever that game failed to beat us, and they ended up beating us. And I made some strategic mistakes, but still, we probably shouldn't have played them. Looking back, hindsight, probably shouldn't have played them. And then if we're undefeated playing Bill in the state championship game, it may have been a different story. May not. I got to give Bill and them a lot of credit. They were ready to play.
Not good. Yeah, I agree.
They had a great football team.
Like you went from, stratosphere popularity. At the end of the day, looking back on it, what does that mean to you to know that you literally are polarized as maybe the most popular high school football coach possibly ever in the nation?
I don't know. Sometimes I think it's good. Sometimes I think it's not so good.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that it's necessary that I have to be under those lights. My wife talks about it all the time.
She did earlier.
Yeah, she did. I mean, and the thing about it is, if we're in South Georgia, it was a calming effect coming down here, but because people, they didn't get into that. Football's important down here. They didn't care about that, and that was a breath of fresh air, to be honest with you.
Right.
They sort of protected me, and they didn't ask me about it all the time. But man, if we traveled to Miami or Chicago or New York or Los Angeles or anywhere, I mean, I could not even walk into an airport. I couldn't go into a restaurant. I mean, it was unbelievable. In 08 and 09 when I was down here, and we would go do stuff and go speak on these speaking tours that I had lined up.
Man.
I mean, you can't imagine at the number of people that would come up to me. I mean, I'm with Urban Meyer. We're in Chicago at the airport. We're snowed in. There'd be 100 people come up, take pictures, autographs, shake hands to one for him, and he just won the national championship. I mean, it's the most bizarre thing I'd ever seen in my life. But at the end of the day, so I think there was good with it, and I think there was bad with it. And, so, I mean, if I had it over to do it again, would I have done it? Yeah. But I would have done it in a different manner. Yeah, I'd have had us an entertainment attorney. I would take care of the school, making sure that they were ripping the benefits and not just the people that's doing the filming and all that stuff. But I think it's, I mean, but let me ask you something. What's the difference in what we did and what Nick Saban has done with HBO and Belichick? Or what's the difference in the all-access thing that ESPN did on Nick Saban camp, chronicling his football team, other teams, John Capillari, the Kentucky deal, the same production company that did mine did Navy football, did the Kentucky basketball team, did Notre Dame football. So people can talk about it, but why is it now? What's Hard Knocks? What's the difference? I mean, you get what I'm saying?
It's followed what you did.
So, I mean, I think a lot of it spun, and I know Hard Knocks had already been started, but I don't think it got amped up as much until the two-a-day show came out and became as popular as it did because it was the #1 reality show on TV. Mm-hmm. And so I think now, though, I look and I see Coach Saban doing it, and I see these colleges doing it now, and I'm laughing, going, now people want to criticize what we did, and they're doing the exact same thing. Identical.
And I'm going to be honest with you, in my personal opinion, and I normally don't talk on our videos, but I do have an opinion on this. I think what made yours go to the stratosphere is not everybody plays for Alabama. Not everybody's an NFL football player. But it's about 90-something% of your audience finished high school, went to high school, and was a part of a football program. And I think that's what captured, hey man, these guys, this is a high, I played high school football. This stuff really happens. They felt attached to it because they've lived it. The difference is not everybody plays for the New York Jets, and not everybody is eligible. What is it, like less than 1% of high school athletes makes it to Division I, right? So I think that's why it took you to that next level, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it is.
I think Ding is the possible. You know,
how many times have you been asked about that?
Oh, the Ding that speaks a million times. You know, Southwest Airline even stole that. You know, they did a commercial on that, and they got it from us, and from that speech. And again, we didn't patent the dadgum thing or where we could make money off of it. We wasn't real smart, but Ding, you're right. And what you're saying is exactly right. And I think that here's another thing that made that show popular. Is it also attracted an audience that wasn't football people.
Absolutely.
You know, the regular ESPN couch sports junkie.
Absolutely.
You know, may or may not have watched it, but man, it was 77 million over a 2-year period that viewed that thing. Man, you ain't gonna believe. And back here in my filing cabinet and thumb drives that I've got saved emails and support, and there was one negative letter over 2 years. One. Thousands and thousands and thousands of positive letters. People would call us from Montana and Idaho and Wyoming saying, man, it's helped us create a football program. And it's helped us, you know, get people fired up about football. It's because of what y'all did.
Crazy.
And so I think overall the message was good, especially the first year. It's just that second year I got irritated with it, just like Jeremy did. And again, I think Dale's right. So, but I do believe that if I had to do it over again, I would do it again. But just now, I would do it a different way to make it even more helpful to the school.
All right. Let me ask you this. Now, back in tail end of that, what we're just talking about, how popular it was. When you get popular like that, you become a target. You know, some people to come in and take shots. You know, Paul Feinbaum at one point said, you were the third university in the state.
That's right.
And then he goes around and flips around and says negative things about you towards the tail end of your career.
Yeah, he did.
My question to you is, how do you handle that negative media attention? Because I'm sure, you know, like usually newspapers and things like that, say Birmingham News or whatever, write an article about Hoover. You know, they're probably not going to go attack you. But then when you got on that level, well, now you've got ESPN. You know, Paul Feinbaum at the time wasn't nowhere near as huge as he is now, but you probably had attackers at different levels and stuff. How did you transition into handling that? Well, from your aspect,
I'll rag on Paul a little bit in the fact that I lied to Paul about something, and I think it made him mad. And number one, number two is he was only reporting on what he thought he needed to report on because that was his platform. So I don't hold any ill wills with Paul. He's also, if you look at the E60 deal, he really bragged on me about things, and he's kept up with me. And Paul texts me ever so often, asks me how I'm doing. So, you know, I think we've got a pretty good relationship now. And but again, I think that with the Hoover thing, I drew a lot of criticism to myself now. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I was at fault with Hoover at the end. I mean, I just was. I mean, there were some things that I didn't do right from a personal standpoint. From a personal standpoint, inside the building at Hoover, I did nothing wrong. Absolutely. Outside of playing an eligible player that we thought was eligible. Not only that I thought was eligible, the AD thought was eligible, the principal thought was eligible, The superintendent had signed off on it. Everybody had signed off on it. And even Steve Savarese had signed off on it. Mm-hmm. And then when it became public that this could possibly have happened, somebody attacked us on it. And then I think the media pressure got so great is when they end up coming back and saying, look, we've got to suspend this kid, and also we're going to forfeit 4 ball games. So a lot of people don't realize Steve called me and said, Rush, I wouldn't play this kid tonight if you really want to be in the playoffs, because I think this ruling's going to come down on you, and if you can win the game without him, I wouldn't play you. So I thought Steve gave me a good heads up. I didn't play the kid that night, winning that game, and that was the game that at least got us in the playoffs in 07. So I was appreciative of that. I think he even knew that things were becoming heated. But let me say this and state this. When you go back to Hoover High School, outside of my personal life that I did not handle correctly, nothing else inside the walls of Hoover High School I did wrong. I would put my hand on the Bible and swear in a court of law that nothing else I did was wrong. And I've told you off the air, I wish that I would have handled that situation different in my personal life. I apologize for that. I've asked for forgiveness for that. And I really deep down believe that God has blessed me and my family. All 7 of my children, or 6 of my children, and my stepdaughter. We've got a great relationship, and I've got a granddaughter now that I cherish that's 4 weeks old. So life as a family man is good. It's really absolutely good. And so I have a wonderful wife. I have a wonderful family. I just wish things would have gone differently, but no one knows the true story that you and I talked about my personal life. If they knew the inside story of what really happened, I think people would have a different opinion of me. Absolutely. But all I can do is, and I have 100 times, asked the good Lord for forgiveness, and I deeply believe that I've been granted forgiveness.
Absolutely. And I want to say this, and this is something we do here. And I never plug my channel, but I'm going to plug my channel on something right here because I think it pertains to you in a perfect way. Average Joes, we don't do negative press in any way, but what we do is do positive about anybody. We cover schools that have 1 win, and we also cover schools that's won 85 games out of 88 with 4 state titles, and we cover them the same. And the reason we do that is there's always positives in every negative. You learn from your negatives and mistakes, but you've won 5 state championships in the state of Alabama. You've won 2 in Georgia. You've also won a national championship. And all that's great. It really is. But to me, the most important thing in all that is how many lives you've affected in a positive way. We talked off there, you've gotten 250 kids now to the next level to play college football. Well, what that means is maybe not all their scholarship, but some of them's going, with debt-free, getting an education. Well, then they're going to go get married, and then they're going to have a wife and kid, and they're going to have a good foundation.
That's right.
So that's even another level of helping people. So then, how many of these kids would have been in the streets if you didn't change them to go play football? And then they learned, self-discipline. They learned, hey, I've got to work if I want something. I don't care what anybody says. There's a lot more good to you than there is negative, and it's exactly what you just talked about. And in my opinion, thousands, and let's go ahead and call it again, thousands of lives have been affected in a positive way, and that's sincerely coming from us as a channel. But in your words, what does that mean to you, knowing that literally what you do for a living, and I don't even call it work because I think you would do this for free if you could, and have your bills paid for, whatever. But what does that mean for you when you take a kid that may have had nothing, nothing, and then you turn that kid into a man, and you see that kid, you could be years after he's left but hey man, at some point in my life I did something and he's come up and probably told you that. What I went through with you, Coach, has got me to where I am today. I'm working, I've got kids. And when you first met that kid, you may have said, hey, this guy could be, he's going to be in the streets, or he could be dead. What does that mean to you when a guy comes back to you and thanks you for that?
It means the world. And I've said this publicly down here. I may have not said it enough people in Alabama have heard this, but I've said this and I mean this. Those 250 kids that have signed scholarships over a 30-year period mean more to me than any of the championships I've won.
That's awesome.
Or the 295 games that I've won.
That's awesome.
I mean, the 295 games are not going to get you into the kingdom of heaven. Championships you can't take with you. Those rings back there, I don't even know if they're all back there. You know, there's no trophies in this room. You know, there's some articles that state I've won trophies in this room, but I just, that gathers dust and it loses something. What doesn't lose is that kid, changing that kid's life. And I'm telling you, 250 kids' lives have been changed. And people are saying, well, yeah, Rush, but they're good football players. They're going to get scholarship. That's where they're wrong. 50 of them, I agree with. 50 of those kids, like the Chad Jackson, no question, didn't need my help. You know, he was a first pick of the second round. Probably should have been a first rounder if he'd have stayed in one more year at Florida like I tried to get him to do. He'd probably been about a 14th, 13th pick in the draft. But yeah, Chad Jackson may have not have needed my help to get a Division I scholarship. Now, he may have needed my help to guide along the way, you know, because I met him when he was in the 8th grade and conformed in how I wanted him to go. So let's just say 50 of them, and that may be even way too many. But 200 of them, I don't think would have gotten a chance. And I'm going to give you a great example. Just had one, Cam Irvin, just win the Super Bowl for the Kansas City Chiefs. When I got to Colquitt County High School in 2008, in February 1 of 2008, that kid told me he wasn't playing football.
What?
He was just going to play basketball.
Wow.
And so we fought tooth and nails. We fought tooth and nails to get him in the weight room. He did. I fought him tooth and nails in the weight rack, making him dang work. He hated squatting. He hated working hard, all that kind of stuff. And I kept pounding him and pounding him and pounding him. And now look at him. He was an All-American at Florida State. He won the national championship. He played for me. He was my son and him were like brothers. He stayed at my house all the time, lived at my house most of the time. And he is a kid that's a Super Bowl champion.
It's crazy.
You know how many scholarships that kid had coming out of college? 2. He had Middle Tennessee because of Tony Franklin and my friendship, and Florida State only because I had Jack Hines on his staff, and Jack and I wore Coach Bowden out and just kept pushing and pushing and pushing to get him signed. He didn't even do a scholarship offer till late October. So I think the biggest thing too is, you know, you look at that, and I'm going to give you another example. Yesterday, you know what I worked on all day?
What's that?
Getting Quay Haynes a scholarship, which is a player here at Colquitt County. So there's several kids at Colquitt County, about 4 of them, that I worked my fanny off to get them scholarships, because without me calling and really talking to these college coaches, I don't know if they'd have gotten it.
Right.
And finally, yesterday, Quay Haynes right now has an opportunity either at Western Kentucky, because they got 1 scholarship left. I talked to Tyson Helton yesterday, and I talked to, of course, Coach Baker, and then also he's got a junior college scholarship waiting on him if this doesn't work out. So he's another kid that I may end up moving into my house the last couple of months of school, because I don't want the kid to get in trouble.
Correct.
And I think that we've done that here several times, where several kids have moved in with me, especially their senior year, just because they don't have a good home life. And me and my wife have taken them in and helped them. I just think it's our duty as football coaches to help kids.
Right.
And I think, and here's another thing, 138 kids have signed here just at this school in 10 years, 138. Not counting the 4 or 5 that I helped this past month. Okay? Out of that, 95% of those kids are first generation college kids. So that means their parents didn't go to school. So, or their grandparents didn't go. So that's 95%. I think there's only like 8 of them, 7 or 8 of the 138 whose parents went to college. So I think that's the biggest blessing the biggest attribute,
Same.
the biggest thing that when I hang my cleats and whistle up, or hang not my cleats, but my whistle up and my clipboard up, and I walk away from this game in 7 years or 8 years, whatever I decide when to walk away, that's going to be my biggest thing that I feel good about. That I can sit there on my dying bed one day and I can say that I helped X number of kids to achieve their goal and hopefully gave them a foundation of being a solid citizen, a solid husband, and a solid father. Because how many kids I've coached out of this last 138 who don't have a father in the household, it's about 88%.
And you are that father figure
Yes.
at this point.
Coaches are. And so I just think that in a perfect world, and all these people sit out there and they want to talk about, you know, that want to criticize things, they're the same ones who sit, you know, in a perfect home, mom, dad, their kids, and they think their family, that all football kids should be like a family like theirs. And that's just not society that we live in today.
Absolutely.
It's just not.
It's not.
And it's not just football, it's every sport. And you know what? Every teacher ought to take that same philosophy and go the extra mile. Let a kid stay with you. Let him stay with you. Put that kid in a car and drive him to a university and promote that kid to that university. Do that some as a regular classroom teacher. You know, I'm just saying, until you do that, I think that, and I've worked for administrators going back to Asheville days. My principal in 1991 or 2, he put all the teachers on a bus during the teacher work day, and when he rode around, he showed all our teachers where some of these kids were living.
Poverty and stuff.
And showed them how, you know, some of the things they come out of every day. And you know what? We went back to that faculty meeting that afternoon.
But he changed it.
And he went off on the teachers. He said, now you understand why you do more than just teach them.
God, that's an awesome.
And that's one of the best things I've ever seen done
That is
as an
awesome.
administrator. And I'm going to tell you what, it changed the mindset of our faculty there at Asheville. And people started realizing, you know what? You're right. This kid don't come from the same thing that I come from. And that's it. That's why we're in this job of teaching anyway. We're not in it. We're in it to help kids to achieve their goals in life. And for a teacher to say, well, if they get it, they get it. They don't, they don't. You need to get out. You need to get out of teaching.
Yeah.
Or if, you know, it's not our job, or I heard coaches say, it's not our job to get them a scholarship. Then what is your job? Then what is your job? Winning? Is that your only job? I mean, that runs me crazy if I hear a coach say, well, it's not my job to get them a scholarship. It is your job, and I'm going to say this into this camera, it is your job as a football coach. Any people who listen to this, it is your sole job to get them a scholarship and to help them achieve a scholarship, to achieve their goal, and maybe change their life in a positive way. So if you're in this just to win football games, you need to get out. You need to be in this to help kids.
I agree with that, 100%. And, you know, and I'm going to ask you this. I'm combining a few of my questions here so we can get a little closer to wrapping it up. You actually already hit on the last thing I was going to ask you in this interview, which was what you wanted to be remembered by. But let me ask you this. When you got to Cokewood County, they were 2-8, and you built this into a national prominent. You actually won a national championship here.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 138 kids to the next level, 2 state championships. Now, all that, you know, you're going to get accolades for that. But let me ask you this. What does it take for that kid? I know you're setting the standard for them, and you're setting the platform for them. What do you have to have from that kid back? You know, they've got to meet you halfway here. What does it take to be a football player for you on one of your programs?
Well, you got to be willing to, number one, I don't want to say the word sell your soul, but anything less than that would be everything I ask of you. You have to be 100% bought in to be a football player for us. I mean, you have to be willing to sacrifice.
Anywhere you've been.
Yes, anywhere I've been. But the ultimate sacrifice, the time spent in this sport, most things that we do inside the game of football are not fun. You know, the hard weight workouts early in the morning, the hot practices and the long practices, the study hall and the academic pushing that we push, of you doing your academic work, your ACT prep, how to be a good human being, and the character development, the things that we do, but just the effort it takes to be a big time football player is an awful lot of time. And during the season we ask them to come in on Sunday and give us 4 hours. We ask them to go to treatment even if they got a bump on Saturdays for an hour. We ask our quarterbacks to come in on Saturday too. So, and then Mondays our kids usually don't leave the field house till 7 at night. They usually get there at around 7 in the morning. So, it's a huge investment. There's no question, and it's sometimes not fun, But the reward is in the winning and the success that you have after high school. Because I'm gonna give you a stat that I've found here recently that since 2013, it's high anyway. It's in the 80 percentile for the whole 11 years I've been here. But since 2013, we turned another page in a stat. I've already told you the 95% of kids, this first generation college kids, okay? Listen to this one. 98% of every senior starter since 13, so 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, in 6 years. My last 6 years, nearly every senior football player that started for us received a scholarship. Now, when you can sit down with a parent in a meeting with that parent in the spring, talking about all you got to talk about to that parent, can you imagine when you look at that parent and say, if you give us your son and he plays for us, do you realize what the rewards that they're going to be? And when you throw out the stats, because we've done it, here's 13's team, here were the senior stars. Here's where they went to school. Here's a 14 team, here's the senior stars, this is where they went to school. Here's 15, 16, 17, and 18. We can do that and throw it out there, and when them parents look at that, and they go, my son starts, and here's the other bizarre thing. There's been 3 kids who have not started that received scholarship in that 6-year period. 3. Now, they rotated in and played a good bit. And so I just think when you get it to that level and you've helped that many kids and they see that, then they're willing
sacrifice some time.
You dang right. And guess what? When they come home complaining, that parent goes, I don't hear you complaining. You're going to football practice today. You're going to be involved and you're going to do this because guess what? I don't have the money to send you to school.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing you can do if you get a high school diploma in South Georgia means absolutely nothing. Here's what it does. It assures you that you can go to work at the chicken plant, probably work second or third shift. It can put you in some type of work at the hospital, maybe, in the workforce. Or you can get into the produce. We're the largest agricultural producing county east of the Mississippi River. We produce more agricultural produce than anybody east of the Mississippi. So these kids can go and work for these farmers and make $10, $11 an hour doing that with a high school diploma. But there's just not enough industrial or not enough trade technical jobs here for them to advance. So to me, getting that football scholarship and getting out of here and going to get a degree, that don't mean you don't come back if you want to. But here's what I'm seeing. A lot of them are not coming back because there's just not enough job opportunities.
You got options at that point.
But you got options. And so I just think that's to me the biggest thing is these last 6 years. And really, most of them did have opportunities to play. I think the overall thing is like, I think the first 5 years, I think 80-something% of them were advancing, but in the last 6 years it bumped all the way up.
Amazing.
We've only found 2 kids that did 2
that
in
is
6 years.
Unbelievable.
So
Unbelievable. And just to think, some kids who don't start, like I'm a Gator fan and currently have a quarterback starting who didn't even start on his high school team.
that's right.
So that is unbelievable. Coach, I know we're going long-winded here, but I got a couple more for you. Over that time here you spent here at Colquitt County and hearing those numbers, and just to think that, again, it started with a football team that when you were here it's 2-8. So that means I know for a fact you are putting in the work. So my question to you is, how in the world do you maintain a work-life balance for your family and yourself, especially during football season?
Well, I mean, I think that question would be more suited to my wife. She first of all, she's involved at that field house every day. She's my nutritionist. She feeds the players. She changed their nutritional habits and how to eat like an athlete. She's connected to a couple of nutritionists, one at Florida, one at Alabama, and somewhat at Georgia. But we do the right things in feeding our players. But my point being is, for us to be able to run a household, and both of us being involved as we are, as my mother-in-law and daddy-in-law has lived with us now for 10 years. And I think that's a big plus for us, because she can come home at 9 o'clock at night, get them in bed. She gets them off to school the next morning at 7:50, and then she gets in her car and gets to the field house by 8:15, 8:20, 8:30 to see the kids, feed them breakfast before they go to class.
Awesome.
So we do that, but I mean, so we balance it out, but it is a lot of time away from your family. And I think growing up, my kids understand the time that I put in with them, and they cherish the time that we're together. So the week off during the 4th of July, that's mandatory that you can't work in this state, we always take them to the beach, or we take them to somewhere, and they've enjoyed that. Spring break, we go usually for a half a week. They enjoy that. Christmas is really around 2 weeks of being able to just have family time, and my boys, I take them hunting, and we do this Christmas thing together, and we do something every single day. And then what weekends that we can squeeze in there, which is not a lot, but there are some, is that we've found how to adapt. And I don't know that I always did that, and I think, but with my family now, over the last 11, 12 years, we've been able to enjoy a family unit time, and it's been very good. And I think that they cherish it, obviously, because they know, okay, Dad's not always here, and Mom's not here a lot. So when we are together, we enjoy ourselves a lot.
It makes sense that she's bought in with you and what you do, invested. So
I would not be successful without her. And people are going to say, well, you won all those championships at Hoover and she wasn't involved. Well, she was involved, but from afar, and she was my rock, she was my support. But, they say behind every successful man is a successful woman. I'm just telling you, I couldn't do it without her. I wouldn't even entertain another job without her.
absolutely.
I just wouldn't. And I think maybe sometimes it's kept me out of college football because of that, to a certain extent, because I want those kids to see the family unit, because my players understand. They call her mom. Over half the players call her mom.
That's awesome.
If not, they call her Mom Steph. They either call her Mama Steph, Mom, or Miss Steph. That's the 3 things she answers to at that field house. And it's been remarkable, and she does everything for them. She signs them up the ACT.
Awesome.
Most times she'll pay for it. She she makes sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. And if they come in dressed not right, she's constantly saying, take your earring out of here. You're not wearing an earring here. She's, pull your pants up. You're not wearing your pants like that, or you're not dressing like this. She's constantly teaching them how to talk and enter. Because a lot of times nowadays, even my own children, all they do is talk on that laptop or on that phone. They lose how to communicate with people, and she's constantly doing that and teaching kids how to speak and how to look people in the eye and be yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, thank you very much. All those kinds of natural things that they should be taught at home that they don't get taught at home, she does it at the school.
That's amazing. And she's bought in. That is awesome. Now let me ask you this, Coach. I think we'll close on this one right here. Off the camera we talked about how you feel better now after the cancer, and you spoke about the cancer, and I'm positive she was a rock during that as well. There's no doubt about it. And you got a lot more juice in your tank. I can tell by hanging out with you today. At what point do you think you will hang up the whistle? Is there something? I've asked coaches this in the past that we're thinking about or getting close to it. But is there something that you've got instilled in your head when you think this is going to be when I'm ready to put it down?
I look at Coach Saban at 68. I look at Bill Belichick at 67. He'll turn 68, I think, in May. Pete Carroll at 68. I see the level in which they're keeping right now, which is at the highest level. I'm over 6 years younger than they are. Me being semi-off a year, I worked at UAB this year as a volunteer, and Bill Clark and I had a ball. And I'm talking about we're working 14, 15 hours a day.
That's crazy.
And but I'm having a ball. I lived with Bill, and during that time, but to answer your question, I think this year's energized me, man. I just think being away from high school football a year, I'm really energized. And would I love to get in college football? Yes. But I'll be satisfied to finish my career in high school football. I have no problem with that. But, because I've turned down some opportunities. I've actually turned down some analyst job because the money wasn't good enough, or I was going to have to be away from my family. It's got to be the right situation, and Bill and I've talked a lot about it, and so going forward, I think you're going to see Rush Propst hang in here for quite some time. I would be shocked if I'm not coaching 7 years going forward. I think 7 years, at least 7 more years. I want to coach into my late 60s, and I don't know if I want to coach at age 70. So, it's 8.5 years away. So, I may either go 5 more years, 8 more years, somewhere in that neighborhood, based on my health, which my health's great. I think we talked about that today.
Absolutely.
I got great numbers. I'm eating right. I'm exercising. I feel wonderful. I'm itching to go. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get back into it 15, 16 hours a day, just like that rat in the cage. I've always talked about spinning the wheel. I am ready to go. And I think my wife's ready for me to go. Lord, we spent more time together here lately. And maybe that's why our marriage is so good. But as I work all the time. But no, she's been wonderful. And she's ready for me to go. She's actually ready to get back into it. She's in her 50s, and she's ready to get back into it too.
She's probably fired up.
Our youngest is John David. He's 13. We have a daughter that's 14, and then we've got a son that's 15 that will be a 10th grade. So it'll be 10th, 9th, and 8th next year. So obviously you see those ages, and then of course Jacob, 28. Has a daughter now, and then Bryant's 27. Actually, he's fixing to go into Special Forces.
That's amazing, awesome.
Green Beret. So I'm happy for that. I think he goes April 7th. He reports to Fort Benning, and then my daughter, that's 24, is in Atlanta. Graduated from Troy Jacob graduated Ball State, and she's working there. And Taylor, my stepdaughter, is a senior, graduated Alabama on May 4th. So we got a great family and a lot more miles to put down.
Y'all got a lot of positives going on, but you know what? I can definitely see a lot more work that you about to put in somewhere, sir.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm not done.
Yeah.
I'm not done, and it has nothing to do with trying to win. People out there saying, he wants to win more state championships. Has nothing to do with that. Has absolutely nothing to do with that. Because what people don't realize, I've won 2 state championships here, but I also lost 3. I've been in 5 state championship games in this state. I've been in 9 of the last 10 years, 9 semifinal games. And then only that 1 year in 16 we got beaten in the quarterfinals by Grayson, and they won the state championship. So what's crazy is in 9 we lost to Camden, they won it. 10 we lost in the state championship game to Brookwood. 11 we lost to Grayson, they won it. 12 we lost to Norcross, they won it. 13 we lost to Norcross, they won it. God, all of them in either the finals or the semifinals, and then we won it in 14 and 15, won 30 in a row. And then 16 lost in the quarterfinals to Grayson. They won it. And then we lost back-to-back championship games. North Gwinnett in 17 on a bizarre play. And then in 18, we just didn't play very well. We were the best team, just didn't play very well. Milton beat us. We ended up 14-1. So, so those things too now drive me too now. I mean, that burns me up that we lost back-to-back championship games. So I want to get in there and redeem that a little bit, but more importantly, I want to get back in to help kids.
To me, this whole interview is taking a full circle, because we started out talking about the fire that burned in you with not winning it at Apache, and then now this fire that we're getting so close with these guys.
And then losing, we were ranked number 1 the whole year, ranked in the top 3 nationally, and we don't have. In 18, we had 12 of 15 games. We had a running clock in the 4th quarter, where the game was that far out of hand. Man. In this state, you have a running clock, you have a 30-point lead. Well, 12 of them, we had a 30-point lead or better. So we're by far the most dominant team in 18. And then get into the state championship game and just lay an egg. And why that happened, I've asked myself 100 times, why? When you're the best team you possibly ever had, don't win it. But you know what? In 06 was our best team in Hoover. We didn't win it. And then we were the best team at Ohatchee High School in 1975, and we don't win it. So those things do bug you. And, so.
Ain't that crazy?
It is crazy. So, but I am anxious to get back involved and help kids and I'm helping kids. Like I said, as of yesterday, I'm still helping kids, and I'll continue to help kids. So that's what fires me up the most, and basically wants me to get back in it, is to help children.
Coach, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I appreciate you having us in at your house here. It's been amazing.
Well, thank you for what you do, because I hope this interview helps some young coaches out there and helps people understand a little bit more about Rush Propst. My phone, my house is open to anyone. It always has been. I have an open door policy. And I've got a lot more to do, and a lot more people out there like you that are listening to this now to get to know and to be able to start a relationship with you that is a viewer. So, hey, I live here in 96 Lower Meigs, Moultrie, Georgia. You're welcome to come see me at any time, and hopefully in the coming weeks there's going to be some real good positive news and some good news that are coming out. I feel good about that, and I'm going to be back in coaching soon.
Looking forward to it, Coach. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.